It isn't the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of being less needed. That's the kind nobody really warns you about, because after 60, sometimes nothing bad happens, and yet something feels different. The house gets quieter. The phone doesn't ring the way it used to. You don't have the same reasons to hurry. And you might find yourself standing in the kitchen noticing small things: an unused lunchbox, an empty coat rack, one less pair of shoes by the door. Little signs that life has shifted seasons. And what makes it confusing is this: you can have family and still feel lonely. You can have people around and still feel this quiet, hollow space. Not because you're ungrateful, because roles changed. For decades, your days were full of being needed. Someone needed you to drive them, feed them, remind them, manage them, fix things, carry things, hold things together. Then one day, they don't, or they need you less. And the world tells you you should be relieved, but your heart may whisper, "So what am I now?" Tonight's letter is about the loneliness no one talks about after 60, and it's not what you think. It's not always about having nobody. Sometimes it's about having fewer roles, fewer calls, fewer places where you feel essential. Loneliness can be quiet and still heavy. I wasn't broken. I was between seasons. So if you've been feeling that quiet loneliness lately, let me say this gently. You're not failing. You're human. And there are ways to keep your heart warm without forcing busyness and without pretending you don't feel it. In the next part, I want to talk about the loneliness of fewer roles, why retirement, grown kids, and changing routines can make the days feel strangely empty, even when your life is still full of love. Some loneliness after 60 doesn't come from people leaving. It comes from your roles leaving. You retire and suddenly your days don't have the same structure. You're not needed in the same way. You're not on call for a workplace. You're not solving problems every hour. Or your kids grow up and the house becomes quieter than you imagined. No backpacks, no after-school noise, no constant questions. Even caregiving can change. Maybe you spent years caring for someone and then that season ends. And when it ends, you don't just lose the person or the task. You lose the identity, the reason to get up and move, the reason your day mattered in a visible way. I remember someone telling me that the first Monday after retirement felt louder than any office because the silence had nothing to compete with. The clock ticked, the coffee brewed, and there was nowhere you had to be. It sounds like freedom. But at first, it can feel like being unanchored. My calendar went quiet, and so did my identity. And if you were a responsible person, this can hit you hard, because you built your life around usefulness. You were the one who remembered birthdays, the one who handled details, the one who showed up. So remember this: if you tied your worth to being needed, then not being needed will feel like disappearing. I missed being depended on. Not because I wanted to be used, because being depended on can feel like proof that you matter. It can feel like purpose. So when those roles fade, it can leave a gap. And the gap can feel like loneliness. But that doesn't mean your life is empty. It means the old structure is gone, and the new one hasn't fully formed yet. That's why I said, I wasn't broken. I was between seasons. In the next part, I want to talk about the phone. the calls that don't come. Because many people blame themselves and think, I must not matter. But there are reasons people don't reach out, and it's not always personal. Sometimes it's modern life. Sometimes it's aging. Sometimes it's just that a relationship was built on a role that quietly ended. When the phone gets quiet, the mind gets loud. You start filling in the silence with stories. Maybe they don't miss me. Maybe I'm a burden now. Maybe I'm forgotten. But here's something older age teaches gently. Silence isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's distraction. People are busy in a way that's almost constant now. Work follows them home. Phones steal their attention. Young families move in a blur of school schedules and bills and exhaustion. They may love you deeply and still forget to call. Not because you don't matter, because their life is noisy. And sometimes the quiet isn't about them being busy. Sometimes it's about them being tired too. Friends your age may be dealing with health issues, doctor visits, grief, mobility problems. Some people pull back when life hurts. They don't have energy for conversation, even if they miss you. And then there's another truth that can sting, but it's useful. Some connections were built on convenience. You saw each other because of work, or because of kids, or because you lived near each other, or because you were the one who hosted. And when that structure disappears, the connection fades, not because you weren't lovable, but because the relationship was tied to a role. I've seen this 100 ways. You're the one who always hosts Thanksgiving. Then one year you don't. You're tired. You scale back. You decide you want a quieter holiday. And suddenly, the invitations stop. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes because people don't know how to keep a relationship without the role you played. That's why this season can feel lonely. You're not just missing people, you're missing the shape your relationships used to take. So before you blame yourself, pause. Ask a kinder question. Is this personal or is this life-changing? Because often it's life. And once you stop making it a verdict on your worth, you can do something that actually helps. You can choose connection on purpose. In the next part, I want to talk about how to keep your heart warm without chasing people. Small human ways to reach out, build gentle connection, and stop waiting to be chosen. Here's what I've learned about loneliness. It gets worse when you sit in it silently and let it tell you stories. And it gets softer when you add one small thread of warmth. Not a big dramatic reinvention, just one thread. Because after 60, connection doesn't always happen by accident anymore. You often have to choose it. And that can feel vulnerable, but it's also powerful. I stopped waiting to be chosen. That's a turning point. It doesn't mean you start chasing people who don't care. It means you stop putting your heart on a shelf and hoping someone notices. You reach out where it's safe. Low-stakes warmth. A simple call to one person you trust. Not to make it awkward, just to say, I was thinking about you. A short note in the mail, a birthday card that isn't fancy, just real. An invitation that doesn't require a big yes. Want to meet for coffee for 30 minutes? Want to take a walk this week? Want to sit on the porch for a bit? And if they say no, you don't take it as a verdict. You try again with someone else. Because warmth is something you practice. Another way is choosing places where people gather gently. Not loud places, not places that exhaust you. Places that fit older life. a library event, a morning walk where you see familiar faces, a local cafe where the staff starts recognizing you, a community garden, a senior center class if that feels right, even volunteering, small, contained, not draining. 2 hours, not 2 days, just enough to feel useful without losing yourself. And for some people, a pet becomes a kind of bridge back to tenderness. Not because a pet replaces people, but because it keeps your heart practicing care. It keeps your home alive. It gives your hands something warm to hold. Loneliness often tries to harden you. It tells you, don't bother. People don't care. But the older skill is staying soft without being foolish. You don't chase. You don't beg. You simply keep your heart open in small, practical ways. And over time, those small ways become a life. In the next part, I want to name a different loneliness, one that's even harder to talk about. The loneliness that can exist inside relationships. Because sometimes the house isn't empty, yet you still feel unseen. And that kind of loneliness needs a different kind of tenderness. There's a loneliness that can exist even when you're not alone, and it's one of the hardest kinds to explain. Because if you have a spouse or family or people around you, the world assumes you're fine. But you can sit next to someone on the couch and feel miles apart. You can eat dinner with someone and feel like you're eating beside a stranger. You can be surrounded by conversation and still feel unseen. Company isn't the same as connection. That's the loneliness nobody wants to admit because it sounds ungrateful. But it's not about gratitude. It's about being known. I want it to be known, not just present. After 60, relationships can become practical. You talk about appointments, medications, groceries, bills. And sometimes the deeper parts of you, the tender parts, don't get asked about anymore. Not because people don't love you, sometimes because they assume they already know you, or because everyone is tired, or because it's easier to stay on the surface than risk emotion. And if you're the kind of person who spent years carrying everyone's feelings, you may have trained your family to rely on you without actually seeing you. You were the organizer, the listener, the steady one. So now, when you want softness back, it can feel awkward to ask. But you can ask gently, not with a big confrontation, just with a small reach, a quiet sentence. Can we talk for a minute? I've been feeling a little lonely lately. I miss when we really talked. Tell me something about your day that mattered. Sometimes that opens a door. Sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, that's when you give yourself permission to seek depth elsewhere too. A friend you can be real with, a sibling who understands, a group where conversation has heart. Because one person doesn't have to hold your entire emotional world. And here's something else. Sometimes loneliness inside a relationship is grief. You're grieving the version of your relationship that used to exist, the energy you used to have, the closeness you used to feel. And grief can live right beside love. So be gentle with them, with yourself. In the next part, I want to talk about the quiet skill that changes the whole season. Befriending your own life. Not in a just be happy alone way, in a human way. A way that keeps the heart warm, even when the phone is quiet. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness feels like being left out. Solitude can feel like coming home. But solitude doesn't happen automatically. It's a skill. And after 60, it becomes one of the most important skills you can learn. Befriending your own life. Not in a forced, cheerful way. Not in a, I don't need anyone way. In a simple, warm way that says, my life can hold me too. This is where small rituals matter. Not because they fix loneliness like a switch, because they keep your heart from going cold. A morning walk at the same time each day. A small plant you water and watch grow. Music in the house, not loud, just present. Cooking one good meal for yourself like you matter. Sitting outside for 10 minutes and letting the air touch your face. A weekly library visit. A routine phone call with one person you trust. These things sound small, but they build a life that has warmth inside it. I learned to keep my heart open, because loneliness can make you do the opposite. It can make you withdraw. It can make you say, fine, I won't need anyone. But that's not peace. That's armor. And armor gets heavy. So you choose something softer. You allow yourself to miss people without collapsing. You allow grief to have a seat without letting it take the whole house. You stay open to new rhythms, new friendships, new forms of connection that aren't based on old roles. Because after 60, connection often comes differently. It comes through small, repeated encounters. Seeing the same person on the walking path, talking to the same barista, sitting next to the same neighbor at a community event. It's not dramatic, it's gentle. And gentle can still be real. Solitude can be a kind of grace. Not because you wanted fewer calls, but because you learn how to live warmly, even on quiet days. In the closing, I want to leave you with comfort, because if you've been feeling lonely, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human in a new season. And you can keep your heart warm, one small thread at a time. If you've been feeling lonely after 60, let me say this gently. You're not failing. You're not broken. You're in a new season. A season where the phone can be quieter, where the roles can be fewer, where the days can feel strangely open. And yes, loneliness can be quiet and still heavy. But it doesn't have to harden you. You can keep your heart warm in small ways. One phone call, one walk, one place where people gather gently, one routine that makes your life feel held. And even on days when no one calls, you can still be a person worth caring for. You can be kind to yourself. You can build a life that holds you. You're not forgotten. You're becoming someone who knows how to live with depth. If this letter met you at the right time, you're welcome here. And if you'd like, tell me in the comments, what kind of loneliness have you felt after 60 that nobody talks about? Take what helps, leave the rest.